Okay, we're getting ready to start. I'm Dellie Craig. I'm with the library. I am also the local history specialist here. Plus, I am also the activities director for the Genealogy Club. And this is our second session. And the first one was to do with forms, your basic family group chart, and pedigree chart. Tonight it's going to mainly be about sources, primary and secondary sources. And that's where you have your handout. So when I speak about a page, I'll have you look at your page so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay? Okay, the first page I'll be talking about is the primary source page. As you probably know, there's primary sources and secondary sources, but some people don't know which goes to what category. For vitals, your birth certificate, your marriage, and your death. Those are three primary sources. Abstracts of wills, courthouse records, town records, city directories, church baptism records, parish records, land deeds, military list, and family folklore, which to me that's more of a secondary because it's hearsay. But then secondary sources are like your textbooks, your census, your dictionaries, encyclopedias, books that interpret and analyze political commentaries, biographicals, newspaper editorials, and journals. And also obituary is a secondary source. Okay. I'm not doing it in the order it's on that page, but I can. Let me go ahead. Find your birth page. The first page will be a listing typed up saying what type of information is on your birth certificate. This page here.
Birth certificate?
No, birth certificate. Yeah, original.
A little louder.
I'm too loud?
Could you speak
No,
louder?
I can barely hear you.
Oh, okay.
We can't hear you.
Okay. Okay. Original birth certificate. Okay. On the back of that page, you will see an actual birth certificate. So you can compare it later, or you compare it while we're talking. It normally gives the name of the child, the number of the child or the mother, which sometimes that helps you to find, hey, there was a sibling that passed away, sex, color, date of birth, place of birth, mother's age as of her last birthday, if the birth was legitimate, natural, labor, or very difficult, mother's maiden name, mother's residence at the time of birth, mother's birthplace, father's name, father's age, father's occupation, okay, father's occupation, father's birthplace, by whom the return is made. It's normally the doctor. The post office address, and the date of the return, which the date of return may not have been when the birth would happen. It may have been a month later.
What was that again?
I said sometimes the date of birth, the date your birth was recorded, was not always the date. It may have been recorded a whole month later by the doctor. It depends, if you're out of the country.
Is that what the date of return is?
Yes,
Date recorded.
And record number and the physician's name. Then on the back of that, you will see a birth certificate. This happens to be my mother-in-law's. And on hers, it says up here, April the 7th. Well, April the 7th, and then see, the doctor recorded it on May the 4th. Well, my mother-in-law, when she was 89, found out she had to change all her birth dates because of this record. And she said, well, I think my mom knows when I was born and when to celebrate my birthday. But so we had to change everything because of this document. But with him doing in May, you know, he could have had a lot of births during that time. You might wrote in a ledger and never wrote a date beside it. Think, well, I'll remember that. So, but yeah, so you can get a lot of information off of it.
So the date of return,
Date of return
is
is
when
when the
it's
physician recorded it.
Okay.
Mhm. Yes. Now, also pertaining to birth certificates, not generally anyone who needs to see your official birth certificate will probably need to see an official certified from the registrar. Like when we went in the military, we had to prove our birth date, and it had to have that seal from the health department. It couldn't just be the one when you were born. It showed the picture of the hospital and your footprint on it. That don't work. Okay, in some places, if your birth was never filed for a person, then we have what we call a delayed birth certificate, which I'll show you that in a second. Any different places may have different requirements on how the facts certificates are to be established. One of the possible document sources might be used to establish at least some of the facts on place on a delayed certificate of birth. Might be for the delayed, it might be a baptismal record, a church record, a Bible listing might help prove birth. If the birth certificate's not filled for you, you really should fix that. A delayed birth certificate, as I was telling some of you earlier, was when a child was born and they may have lived out in the country and the weather was bad and it wasn't recorded for a year. Well, then you had to get what's called a delayed birth certificate, which is this page here. And it has a lot of the same type of information, but you had to use a different source. Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, on the delayed birth certificate, it has, this one happens to have little numbers beside it to help you see what information's there. But it gives you a lot of the same information. It gives the name of the child. Now it gives a social security number, which some of them don't now. I mean, they do now, but they didn't used to. And it gives you the place of birth, present address, father's full name, father's birthplace, mother's maiden name. So, you know, it gives you a lot of the same information. But you'll see down below, number 10, affidavit signed by Ruth Starnes, our first cousin, and the date of the original document was made when she had to do like an affidavit to help prove when that child was born. Sometimes they use the census. Sometimes they do the census. Well, say like in 1920s, they would have for each child they would have like June to 1980, or you know something for their birth month and year. So that would give them some type of documentation. Some, if you had a child at home and had a neighbor help deliver, sometimes they would get to fill out an affidavit to prove that. Or sometimes the school teacher for the first grade said, well, he started school at 5, so yes, I can verify that. Okay. Any questions on births?
What if you can't find a birth certificate?
Well, in the state of Indiana, birth certificates were supposed to be recorded as of 1882 at state level. But sometimes it fell through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
But now I do have these. These cannot be checked out, but these are in our collection. These are some pre-1882 sources, like a secondary source, but sometimes it gives you that one lead to where you need. And these can be from a marriage document, or it could be from, you know, some source. So put one of these over here. You guys look at that one, and you guys pass that one on. Those cannot be checked out.
If you have a case of an older birth that was recorded, say, just in a church record book, can this procedure be used to get an official confirmation of that?
Yeah, that can be one of the sources to help get a delayed birth certificate. Yes.
Okay, let me ask this question then. My great-grandmother was born April 10th, 1875. Or at least that's what is on her gravestone. That's what was in her obituary. But there's no birth certificate anywhere to be found, not even in church records, you know, that I've searched through in New Orleans. Trying to, you know, find, you know, to make sure that was her actual birth. So in a case like that,
Well, then, normally church records, because most states didn't have to record it yet. Bibles, some place you can sometimes find things. Also, if you go to the 1880 census, it will say how old she was.
yeah, I have that.
And that will give you a time period and a place. And then you can go from there, see what other sources are around.
So I've tried everything. There is nothing nowhere on her.
Okay.
Her brother, who was born 2 years later, I can find his. But nothing on her.
But she really exists.
Yeah, she really did exist, yes, I know.
Well, sometimes you'll find if there was a record in that time period, the person may not went by the name you think they did either, because they may have been Mary Elizabeth something and went by Sis. You know, then you can't find them in those records.
I have that in my grandmother's family. All their given names, all the boys went by their second name. All of them. And I have a hard time finding obituaries on them because I knew them by the name that they used, not by their given first name. It's weird.
Yeah.
What, Lynn?
In the case of my grandfather, he had kind of a mysterious gap in his life between age 12 and 26. And in his case, I have reason to believe he gave some fake information to the officials. And so in the official decennial census, maybe he's not exactly listed by his correct name and or birth date, and same thing for my father.
Oh.
And my grandfather had a business, a self-employed situation where he traveled from time to time all over the country. So in that case, I'm just saying that you may not always be able to depend on the accuracy of the official records because the person might have lied. Or there may have been a careless clerk recording the information in a sloppy way.
Well, sometimes it's even, the person wasn't home, but the aunt gave the information, or the girlfriend gave the information, or the mother-in-law gave the information. She didn't know. That happens too.
You know, it's like my grandfather, he gave his wrong year so he could join the army. He was 2 years younger than what he said, and he was in New York when he signed up for it instead of Texas, where, you know, they could have probably checked easier. So he went into World War I, you know, 2 years younger than he should have.
Okay, we're going to jump to marriages. They'll look like this. Now, not all counties have all these type of records. Montgomery County does, and we have a lot on our website. But I broke it down just in a little information about both. As you'll see, the marriage affidavit is a statement where someone appears with the couple at the courthouse and swears that both parties of legal age and that no impediment to marriages exist. Some affidavits were filled out by parents, guardians, by the clerks. Some of the records also contain handwritten consents for underage grooms and brides. A marriage record includes full name of groom and bride, maiden name for the bride, or name, even maiden name if she is a widow, place of residence, age, next birthday, race, occupation, place of birth, father's name, mother's maiden name. So it gives you a lot of different information. Number of previous marriages. Sometimes you'll find that and say, I didn't know he was married before. And by whom married, and the date, month, and year, and the record date. Now, a license, usually it has full name, surname of the bride and groom, race, place of birth, place of residence, occupation. Someone's got quite a bit the same, and then someone's got a little bit different. Okay, and number of previous marriages, place of marriage, by whom married, and marriage by month, day, year, record. Now, also we have one of the marriage license newer actually have if they were married before, if there was divorce, or if the spouse had passed. And I'll normally give you a year, and sometimes it would even list the children they were responsible for. So sometimes that helps, see responsibility. But other sources for marriages can be your church records, your Bible, and I'm just going to show you one line real quick. Another source for marriage is also your marriage book. I dug mine out of storage today because it gives you a lot of different information that I filled out when we got married, and our wedding pictures, in the newspaper article. It'll also give you who attended the wedding, because that's kind of interesting, seeing who attended Grandma and Grandpa's wedding. Well, are they related? It gives you some you can find. And sometimes they'll even tell you how far away they were. And mine even had the list of gifts we got and who we got it from. And I had a surprise today. I found a letter from my husband's grandmother from 1974. I thought I lost, and it was in this book. Now, that birth records I was talking about, this is my baby book. That's so cute. And I got it from my mom on my 30th birthday. I even still got the little thing she stuck in the front. But this had my birth announcement in it. It even had my formula. Okay. And so, they can give you in the height, weight, what time you were born, what hospital you're born in. It can fill some of those gaps. But yeah, so. Okay. Now, on the back of the marriage certificate and application, the first one is this one here. This is the marriage application. This is the one that gives you quite a bit of information. It gives you, well, this is for my husband's grandparents. It gives you their full name, color, where born, when born, residing in what county at the time, occupation, full Christian name of father, birthplace of father, and color, birthplace for the father, occupation, where he's residing at the time. Now, some marriage documents also say deceased, that the father had already passed away. That way, that gives you an idea, because some people say, well, where did Grandpa go? I never heard of him. That gives you a time period. If he'd been married before. So you can read through all that yourself, and then signature, that's always interesting. And then here is personally known John W. Kiger over here. Well, that was the father-in-law. Signed it. And then down below, I gave the same information for the bride over here. And then down below is that's an application on the top. This is started in 1902 when they started doing this. Then the bottom is where the minister signed off saying this is the date I actually married him. Because sometimes you get your marriage application filled out several days before a wedding. Now this one here is for the same people, but this is the marriage certificate thing they got when they got married. This had been in frame this way, it's done this way. But now see, if you had to prove a marriage for the military, like when we were in the military, this would not work. You'd have to have this and sealed.
Okay. For example, all we have is this, when Craig and I got married. That's all they gave us. We don't have this, but the county clerk's office should have that.
Yeah, when we got our driver's license, you know, that special little star thing down the bottom, I had to go during COVID and get paperwork from Fountain County.
Oh.
That document right there.
I did
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, because you had to have that or you couldn't get it. Yeah, it had to be certified by them. It couldn't just be. And see, this came off of Ancestry, library version, but of course it's not certified. It's just for genealogy purposes. What, Lynn?
On the first page there,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed the record includes information including age next birthday,
Yes.
and that seems odd. Is this the only situation in which that would be the case?
Yeah, because most of the time it's age of last birthday.
Yeah.
But yeah, marriages, I've noticed that. I don't know why, because you would think with the age, limits.
Because if you're not aware of this distinction, you could think there's a discrepancy. If you compare documents, they may have different ages, creating a little confusion.
Yeah.
Or would this be the same from one state to another?
What?
Same application?
Yeah, probably so. Yeah. Yeah.
Most states would have age of next birthday.
Yeah, probably. Because they have to try to be consistent. Depending on what ledger they're using. So see, that's a printed ledger. I've got them back here. Actually, in the archives, I got back to 1823 in the archives. But yeah, 1902 on is when they had the one like they have here on Ancestry.
Okay, you said this was for the Ancestry library version.
Uh-huh.
Would it be in the regular
Yes.
Ancestry version?
Yeah.
I haven't come across it as long as I've been on Ancestry.
Okay. Well, our next session next month, I wanted to do a tour of the local history area for our area, plus for our counties. And then I was going to show you guys how to use the new website because it has different ways to go in than what we were doing before. But then the next month after that, I was going to do Ancestry, Family Search, that. But this today I thought was more important so you know what information you can get off of something, so you can see what sources you already have at home, you can fill some gaps, and then you'll know where you want to go on Ancestry, what you're wanting to look for. Okay? Okay, everybody done with marriages? Let's go to death records. Is this page? I typed these up because I thought it'd be easier for you guys at home to compare with your documents. And for a death record, it normally gives you the name, the date of death, the place of death, the age of death, color, gender, cause of death, duration of illness, exact time of death, date and place of birth, current residence, occupation. And for current residence, sometimes they'll say lived in our county for 40 years. So, that gives you an idea when they came there. Then father's name and birthplace, mother's maiden name and birthplace, spouse's name. And of course, for a woman, it would have her maiden name. Single, married, or divorced. place of burial or cremation, name of funeral home, name of physician or medical examiner, name of the informant to give the information, because some death records is a primary source. But if they have no one left and the funeral home filled in that information, he may not have the parents' names right. We got back from Japan 3 years after my husband's grandmother died, and first thing my mother-in-law did, and she wasn't into genealogy, she got the obituary out. She said, give us 3 kids to get this information right. So, you know, it happens. But then on the back side, you will see a death certificate. Of course, nowadays they do more things. Only thing is, if you go to a health department or write to a health department for a death certificate, tell them you want the genealogy information also. Because, you know, you're not pay 10, 15, some states $30 for a death certificate. And what they do, they just fill it out, or type it in on a form, and they don't write none of the genealogy information's on there.
We've come across in, it's on my husband's side, but a death where no one seemed to come forward. And the obituary only listed that she was born in the state of Nebraska and died in Colorado. It was as if she had no one. You know, I suppose that's kind of what happens if they don't have family, or if family doesn't come forward.
Well, that's like pauper records for poor farms. Here in Crawfordsville, one of ours is online. I've scanned it, and it's online. And it tells you the people that was there. It tells you when they were admitted, what they were admitted for. And it doesn't give the parents' names, but it tells where they were born at. And like if the next of kin was their son, or where they're buried at. And
so there's a lot of people that have more ambiguous.
Right. But see,
my husband had an aunt who had been adopted, and it was his only aunt on that side, and it just, you know, nobody. I evidently, I mean, the way the obituary, it was rather sad. It was rather. This wasn't that long ago. It was disturbing, you know, to see that.
Okay, there is a page in here on.
I guess my point was that they're not. That a funeral home isn't going to publish personal information if there isn't family that gives it to them. They're not going to dig it up and publish it on them.
Unless the person that died, which is nowadays, not maybe as much in the old days, is, you know, people pre-arranged the funerals,
right. She
and
had
then you
been
filled in that
several
information.
years of severe Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think she was just kind of discharged from some of the other family members, and was really.
Well, yeah. She was safe where she was at, so they just kind of forgot about her. Okay. Here's a page on what type of information's in an obituary. But of course, nowadays they have more information. Now they have less information. Because they used to have like the cause of death sometimes in it. Now you'll see men, you know, give to cancer or something, and you'll know that much. But, so I gave a pretty thorough list here. Name, nickname, because sometimes they were known by their nickname all their life. And normally on their birth certificate and their death certificate might have the full name. Birthplace, where born, date of marriage and marriage, where they got married at, date of death, place of death, cause of death. And when you record a death on your charts, be sure to put if they've died in town, put the town, put the county, and the state. Because every so often we get calls for someone from Montgomery County, supposed to die in Montgomery County, in a town that we don't have and we've never had, because I've been on this for so many years. And come to find out it was Ohio.
Or Texas.
Yeah, because every county, every state had it in Montgomery. But here also it gives the spouses, because sometimes they had one or two, sometimes they had 4 or 5. And they give their names and the children and spouses. But what's nice about an obituary is it will list the kids or the siblings, and it'll say where they're at the time that person died. Well, then you can get a hold of family in that other state or county that you never knew about. And maybe you have to find old photographs, old stories. And interesting too is to people that preceded them in death, because you may find out he had 3 brothers no one ever talked about, or he might have had a wife that you didn't know about. Education, which is kind of interesting, because that's kind of what makes us what we are. You kind of learn, oh hey, they were educated more than I thought they was. But employment, or organizations and memberships, awards, honors, achievements, hobbies, name of the funeral home, which nowadays a lot of funeral home records, the new ones, when someone dies, is right on their website. You can just go right there to the obituary, and you can leave a note to the family. And like cremation or accident, and of course, whenever there's an obituary when someone's had an accident, well, you can normally guarantee that there's another article in that paper besides that obituary that you want to find. There may be about the car accident or the murder, or because a lot of people go to page 2, see who's died. They don't look at page 1. Page 1's when the stuff happens.
Sometimes if it's a prominent citizen, it'll be on page 1, but it won't be listed in the obituaries.
Well, Karen Zock and I, through the years, have always done a lot of indexing, and there used to be a whole bunch of index cards, like 70 boxes of them over there, that's now on our website, the index. And one time she came in and she said, I can't find this lady. And her relation, she said, I can't find her obituary. I found it on the front page where it just hadn't got indexed. So, okay, remember, an obituary to me is not a primary source, but that's who tells them the information. Or like now, so much is sent. Even over the phone, you call and give a name. Well, if they don't understand what you're saying, I did research for a person once, and their family was Clemens. Well, in the census, they couldn't find them anywhere. They were under Clementine. So, things happen. And sometimes with an obituary, there are photographs. That's like a marriage announcement. They have a picture of an engagement would have a picture of the bride, future bride, but then the wedding picture would also be in the picture. Okay. And on the back of the obituary is the obituary of my husband's grandfather. So you can compare and look and see what type of information they do give you. Another source I have in here, I don't have every source there is because it would take forever. Another source there's just one page on, it's the naturalization record. When they came from overseas, well, Ancestry and stuff have naturalization, but like we have a naturalization to book 1 from Montgomery County here in our archives. And it can give you a person's name, the age, where born, immigrated from, which of course sometimes immigrating from might not be where they're originally from, because sometimes they went to one country to ship out to another. And when arrived, report of arrival, date of arrival, owes allegiance to. That's like the King of France or England or whatever. Date of oath, date of recording, county clerk's name. If a person signed their own name or they just had an X because some couldn't write.
When did they start keeping naturalization records?
We've got 3 books in their collection that can't be checked out, but they're about naturalization. And the earliest one I have found when I did research when we were in Missouri was back in 1790.
1790? It goes back that far.
I was really surprised because I was doing research for a person. I thought, I won't be able to find anything. I wrote to that area. I got what I needed. Another source, it's a primary source, is registration cards for like World War I, World War II. Now World War II actually had 2 different times they did the draft, the cards. But like here, in this one for World War I, this is my husband's grandfather. Well, see, his middle name was Larkin, but you see on here it's Lark, because it fit in the paper, and that's why he sometimes went by. But see, it gives you a lot of information because it gives you his age, where he decided, his birth date, a natural born, what county he's from, he was born in, what his occupation was. It even tells you the brickyard that he worked for. You may have known, hey, he was a brick mason, but you didn't know what company. Well, this gives you a time gap. In Petersburg, he had a wife and 2 children already. Married, white, and then he had no previous military service. And there's actually another page to that. Where'd it go? And below, and after that one, it does give the information I was just telling you about, what type of information's on there. And then back of that, the next page is the registrar's report. Is to do with that registration I just read. But this one here says, it asks if you're tall, medium, or short. He's listed as medium. Slender, medium, or stout. He was medium built. Color of eyes. Color of hair. And if he had arm or leg or some disability, it could be recorded there. And the person that was a registrar, what district he was from. That sometimes helps you know a location. What township he was in 1917. And down below I typed it so you could read it. Some people have trouble reading it. So this is just some of the sources you can use. Any questions? Lynn?
I was looking at the nationalization record.
Mm-hmm.
And the example at the top of the page is in person who immigrated to this country from England, and it listed allegiance to Queen Elizabeth. I mean, Queen Victoria, sorry.
Right. Well, actually, he was from Ireland.
Yeah, but on the document in this case, it owes allegiance to Queen Victoria.
Great Britain.
Now, so what is the difference here between nationalization and naturalization? I think naturalization is the act of becoming a U.S. citizen, and this is a different word.
Yeah.
And are these
Well, I
considered
probably
this-
typed it wrong. If you're talking about up above, I might have spelled it
Yeah,
wrong.
the
Yeah,
heading.
the heading
Yeah,
on the top.
I did it. That's my fault.
So we should interpret that as naturalization.
Yeah, naturalization.
Becoming
Yeah.
a citizen.
Yeah, I thought I double checked
And
everything.
is that something, according to this document, it appears that the clerk of the county
Mm-hmm.
had the authority to confer the citizenship by filling this form out. Is that how it went?
Well, no, normally, actually, if you look at a naturalization book we have in the RGs that can't be checked out, there was like 3-4 steps they had to do. You had to be in the country. You had to be at a certain place for a certain length of time. If you moved on, then you had to, be there for a certain length of time. So it was different steps, and that's like they came over. They want to be in the military. They had to be naturalized before they can become a soldier in the military.
So there's a lot more maybe than this example certificate indicates. That
Yeah,
much of it.
this is just an example of what we had here. That was the final paperwork.
Okay.
Yeah, because otherwise they had application and stuff, and see, they couldn't own land until they became a citizen. And so,
In that regard, going quickly back to the marriage application for marriage license, in the case of the male entering into the contract of marriage, there's a question: does the male have a means of supporting the family? And I wonder at what point in time, if it ever was that deleted?
I think it's still on there.
Still on there?
I think it's still on there. I can look and
That's
let you know.
quaint.
Yeah.
Nowadays, that's just quaint.
Well, when I scanned some of the old marriage documents with the marriage application above and the thing below, I've seen where they've been marked out because they had the two people that's going to get married, and then it said both drunk, skunks, won't marry them.
I noticed that also people who entered from Ellis Island to become enter the country had to provide, up until a certain date in our history, had to provide a reference who would vouch for them in the U.S. Financially for a certain length of time.
Well, Kentucky, they have what they call bounty, that you had to be responsible for the couple. Yeah.
So some of these things are nowadays honored in the breach.
Yeah, something like that.
Naturalization, I just looked it up, and according to archives.gov, it started in 1790 and went through 1956.
Well, one of the conferences I went to, there was, I think his last name's Cioetto, Cioetto or something. It's been 15 years. He did a lot on naturalization, and actually one of the books in our collection was a paperback that he wrote, and I had him sign. So, but he's still got several books out about passenger lists and stuff like that. Okay, any questions?
Yeah. I've seen a couple of look like legal documents with like these certificates in here, but they were had to do with like two of my great grandfathers or great great grandfathers or something. They had to swear that they had no allegiance to the Kaiser. Now, is that where would you find that? I don't know. Is there a record of those, or is that just a certificate they got?
It might have been a certificate at the time.
I mean, I've seen photocopies of it.
It might have been a certain time period.
Yeah, I think it's just before World War I.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Sometimes they come up with a document that's only good for a certain time period. It worked for the time period, then they didn't do it anymore. But some of those would be in the county level, state level. Best I can say.
I mean, that's not something I would have thought to even look for if it had already been in their personal records.
Well, that's like military records. If you get military records, Civil War records or stuff, you'll be surprised the ones that was in prisoners of war or abandoned, kind of went home. Someone was sick, so they went home and they came back and got demoted and put into another group. So, things happen. So. Okay. So does that sound okay for next time? Learning what's here in the collection and the archives and how to use our website. Then the next one after that, it'd be a month after that, would be like FamilySearch.org, Find a Grave, Ancestry. This way, in the meantime, You can use the new information you got now to fill in your charts and see what type of information you're needing, and then I can show you where to go find it.
Okay, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
This is going back to 1700s,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in France.
Mm-hmm.
I have managed to locate the birth certificates of my, I don't know, fifth, sixth, seventh great-grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's very simple. Evidently, there was something happened to the records, and they've all been in the process of, over time, being retranscribed. So instead of having all this information, all it has is the date, the child's name, and it's who did it. I mean, that's, it has, you know, the last name, then Jean-Baptiste,
Mm-hmm.
and then the date, I forgot what the French word is for birth.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with an N. Then it's got, you know, the date, January, well, 27 Janvier, 1716, and then it's signed by somebody. That is the only record that I've been able to find
Mm-hmm.
of his birth. So is that considered?
It'd be more like an abstract to me.
Yeah. And I mean, it is from the French archives in
Mhm.
Paris,
Mm-hmm.
you know, from their website.
Right. Well,
So-
sometimes they have the old books and they transcribe, you know, or like we have indexes that's been transcribed in, it just gives you the basic information. Then you have to go to the original to see the full. But like over in Germany, my ancestors over there, their birth records and stuff, they had 2 witnesses. They had all sorts of stuff in that
Yeah.
information. So, you know, there are different forms of documents.
Okay, so probably my best bet would be to email or write the French archives, you know, asking if there's more detailed information somewhere in a book or something.
Right, especially since you got a location and stuff already.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've got him, his brother, and his sister. But then what's strange, I found a baptismal record of his brother and a baptismal record of his sister, and they're all in the same handwriting, so it's something that's been transcribed. Because I can't remember if the records were just faded or if they had had some kind of fire and they got charred or what. I remember reading something about why the records were being transcribed. But I don't have anything on the one I'm really looking for. You know, I don't find him.
Well, I would write to that area
Okay.
because on my German line, I could not. My mom, my grandma, they tried for years to follow back from
Yeah.
1854 and they couldn't do it. And my cousin got in contact with, I wrote a letter, because she does the letters. She wrote a letter to Germany, and I got an email. You know, she sent me a letter back that she got a reply, and it had an email address on it. So I sent the email, and next morning I had a reply from that place. They said, we got the person's related to you.
Ah,
And so now I've been able to get back to 1500s
yeah.
thanks to that. But if she hadn't done that, I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Because Ancestry has some of the stuff on there now, but don't have all of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are we about ready to wrap up?